I'm going to give a test of the mute all here. So can you still hear me? Let's see, who do we got here? Jim Olson, if you can hear me, raise your hand. I see your video. Good. So at least one attendant can hear me. And yep, and there's Tom with the thumbs up in Legoland. Thank you. So I didn't mute myself. That's good. I have muted everybody. I will mention to everyone that this meeting will be recorded. And I should have checked the chat. So good job there, Bonnie, saying that she could hear us great as well. I will, but yeah, I just wanted to mention that the meeting is being recorded. And we can get started. So welcome to the second of our virtual 3M Personal Computer Club meetings. We used Skype for business last time, but with 3M moving to Microsoft Teams, we're going to be doing this now in the Microsoft Teams environment. I'm Jim Homan, and I will be presenting Backing Up Your Computer. And I need to get to the right screen here to advance my slides. I was still in the Teams environment. So first, some club business. We'll show a bit about the future meetings, introduce the officers again, talk about new members, etc., and then we'll get to today's main topic. So next month, we'll have another timely presentation about communications off-grid by Chuck Scott. We do have a room reservation, but at this point, it's highly doubtful that we'll get into the actual room, so we will be doing it via web again and using the Microsoft Teams environment. So Chuck will be talking about communications off-grid. This is out on the website as well, so you can see some of the things that will be part of his topic. The MACSIG will be meeting in a couple of days. They will not be meeting in the 201 auditorium. They will also be doing a presentation by web only. Again, I'm Jim Homan, the club president. Linda Brown is our vice president. Can't see anybody waving from the room, so I'm just going to continue to introduce. Paul Ebert is our membership secretary. Mike Griffin, treasurer and MACSIG. Chuck Scott has just stepped up to be the secretary for the club and is our presenter next month as well. So thank you, Chuck. He's already taken the minutes at a couple of the board meetings and has really hit the ground running for us. Andrew Petrucci is our communications coordinator, and Tom Kreutzer, director at large. So again, the help there, thank you to Chuck Scott for agreeing to be the secretary. We are still looking for somebody that can help organize and lead the food events. We would normally have had a sandwich meeting this month. It's so you can eat your own sandwiches, but we couldn't figure out a way to provide it to everyone in the club virtually. Maybe I should have had a picture of a sandwich, I guess. But then our July picnic, our November pizza meeting, all those, we're looking for someone to help then. And that entails ordering, picking up the food. The club does reimburse all the expenses, so you wouldn't be there. Just turn in your receipts and we'll reimburse you for that. And then to coordinate, you don't do it all alone, but we're asking whoever would do that to help coordinate the other helpers that would be helping out. So you might not even get all of the food and supplies, but you would help coordinate. So if you're interested in that, let any of the club officers know, and we welcome your help. For any new members or old members, the dues are payable to Paul Ebert. If you're an old member, you should be getting the reminder notices from Paul, But in order for him to do that, you have to let him know what your email is. So if you're changing your emails, make sure to notify us so that we can keep in touch. If you have any suggestions for topics, email them to any of the board members or talk to any of us, contact us in any way. Or if you'd like to present, you can do that, or you could write a short or long article for the eBytes newsletter. And there's some good examples of that in the latest eBytes, so go ahead and take a look at that, and you'll see what we're talking about there. And out on the website then are the past meeting slides and handouts, as well as the ones for the current meeting. They should be out there for this meeting, for example. Past meeting recordings. And again, I'll remind anybody who joined recently, this meeting is being recorded as well. There's the deals section, the eBytes newsletter that we already mentioned, and these slides. So that's where you can find the site. So are there any questions? And I'll take a quick look at the chat window. So Bonnie says she needs an address where you can send my dues. So that should come from Paul, but we'll make sure that you get that as well, Bonnie. What's nice about Microsoft Teams versus Skype for Business, by the way, is that the meeting chat is around for a while. So I will be able to go back to this and make sure that we can address any of those questions that show up in the chat session if we don't get to them right away during this meeting. So today's topic is backing up your computer. I'm going to go over the questions. I did this presentation, I think it's 5 years ago now, or over 4 years ago, and I realized in many ways things haven't changed. Maybe the tools have, but what we need to do, and actually in the large part how we do it, is still the same. There's just newer tools or updated tools. And this is still going to be focused on computers, desktops or laptops, but we can also consider tablets, phones, and whatever else somebody might want to bring up. I do ask that you can ask questions, but unless it's really pertinent, please save them to the end. And we do have everybody's microphones muted, but you can use the chat feature. And I see that Tom is monitoring that as well, so I'm not going to have to pay too close attention to the chat feature. And then if you do have some experiences, I think there'll be time at the end there that we could have some comments on other people if they have comments about how they're backing up their devices. So a rhetorical question, how many of you back up your computer regularly, and how many of you have had to restore lost files? There's a saying that there's two kinds of people. There's the people that back up their computers regularly, and the people who haven't lost all of their files yet. Because once you do that, then you learn that, yes, I should be backing up my computer regularly. So that's tough motivation if you lose all your files. But I strongly encourage you not to use that motivation. Realize that you really should be backing up your computer. So we know we're supposed to, and that's because we can lose our data due to things like fire or flood. It's bad enough catastrophe to have something like that, but then you lose all of your information that you have stored on your computer at the same time. That just makes a bad situation even worse. You could lose it to ransomware. Software bugs can corrupt the file. If somebody did break into your house or wherever you have your computer, you have theft or loss. Hardware failure, especially your hard drive failing, is another way that you can lose it. That's something that's maybe even more common than some of the others. Or user error. You accidentally deleted a file and you just can't get it back as it wasn't in your recycle basket, your recycle folder, and so that you could recover from a backup. It's also a way to share or move data to other devices. I will mention that that's sharing is something that's often done with syncing. Syncing and backup are related, but they're not exactly the same. So that if you sync something, one of the things to be aware of is that if you delete it, if you're truly syncing, it's going to get deleted from all the other devices that you sync it to. So that's not the same as having it backed up. And that kind of user error, if you're counting on syncing it to be a way to back something up, that's going to compound your error, because once you delete it, it's going to be deleted from the sync devices as well. But it is also, backup is another reason to do it, is to archive files. For example, your tax files, if you have business files, photos, videos, music. In essence, it's anything that you want that you cannot easily recreate. That's what you would need to back up. So I recommend using the rule of 3, or sometimes it's called the 3-2-1 rule. You want to have at least 3 copies of your important data: the original, the backup, and another backup. More copies won't hurt, but these should all be identical files that are in the 3 copies of it. Those backups should be on at least 2 different devices, because if we think about the ways that we can lose it, if they're all on one device and that device is what crashes, you're going to lose your backups as well. So you need to have the backups on at least 2 different devices, and at least one of those devices should be off-site. And again, if you think about the ways that you can lose your data, that's the reason that you need to have one off-site.
Alexa, heater on.
If you had something stolen and your backup device is right next to it, that might be stolen as well. So having it on an off-site location means that whatever caused you to lose your data won't get rid of all of your backups too. So again, what to replace? In particular, it is your personal files, the things that you cannot easily replace later. So that, again, includes your tax files. Unless you want to go all the way through preparing them again, you're not going to have a backup in your so business files, scanned documents, your personal media files. You're not going to have other copies of your photos unless you've backed up your own personal photos. For downloaded or purchased media, that's your choice. You can generally download those items again. It might be if you have taken a CD and ripped it to make MP3 files that you have on whatever your iPod or however you play your music. If you've done that as well, that's up to you. It might be a lot of work to rip those MP3s again, so that's the kind of thing. It's your choice. You can generally download or recreate those, but it would take some effort. Where to find all of your folders or your files? If you use the same organizations that you've been using for years, that still remains in Windows 10, that the users folder and its subfolders are where most of your data is stored, unless you've intentionally moved it somewhere else. So I recommend continue to use those folders, stay organized. And one of the big motivations is because it makes it easier to back up. And I give the examples that on the C drive, your main drive, under users, your username, and then the documents, that's the top level folder for the documents. That's also, if you just use the documents folder, it used to be called My Documents in Windows 10. In Windows 10, it's just called Documents. That's the important folder for containing your personal documents. And then similarly, the music, pictures, and videos folders are actually mapped to these locations. You don't want to forget your email. So if you use Outlook and you're using, you still download it, you're using POP to get the files off the server, and then they're only stored on one device. If that's the way you're using your email still, then you want to make sure that you back that up. And Outlook, for example, this is where you can find that PST file. If you are using it more where you have it on a server setup, it would be an OST file, but I'll just leave it at that. You would want to look for the PST file. If you're using online mail, such as Gmail, you are somewhat already done. You can get at that email from other devices. So if you had your desktop computer fail, you can still get at it from your phone or a laptop or a tablet. But it may not serve what you really need and internet connections do go down. So I recommend that at least if you have important attachments in your Gmail, as soon as you get those attachments sent to you in Gmail, you want to save them in the secure location. So within one of those documents folders, and then that will be included in your backup. And then you can also do a backup of your Google account, including the Gmail, the Google Calendar, etc., using Google Takeout. And I give the address for that, or if you just Google it, if you Google Takeout and you've got a Google account, it'll take you right to this, and this is a way to create a file that has everything backed up. Having a Google account, you will have it, as we'll mention later, everything is backed up there already, but this is a way to create a file that then you could include separately on it if you choose to do so. So also, one of the other things you might want to look for is application data, your browser bookmarks. So Mozilla Firefox and Google Chrome, as mentioned, so Google will have a built-in backup as long as you have an actual Google account, or similarly a Mozilla account if you use Firefox. But otherwise, you can explicitly back up your favorites. You might consider drivers for some of your computer devices, such as video cards, printers, and scanners. I will say I don't actually do that. I did have my hard drive fail, so I had to go to the manufacturer's website to get an updated printer driver for an older printer. Some of these, when you plug in the device, the plug and play kicks it in, and you'll get the drivers when you're setting up a new system anyway, even when you move the peripheral. And it's really not all bad to go out to the manufacturer's website to get those updated drivers, because you will get the latest drivers. Now, again, this is focused on computers, but if for your phones, there are ways to do backups of those as well. I'm not going to go into the details there, but I do give a link here for Android devices or for the iPhone. PC Magazine did give a couple of how-tos on how to do that backup. And maybe at the end of the meeting here, if anyone has comments, if they've done that, they can share that as well. So again, by using your Google account, your data and settings are automatically backed up onto the Google Drive. So that includes your contacts, anything that you have on your Google Calendar, and the settings that you have established for your calendar, your Wi-Fi networks and passwords. If you let it get saved there, then they will be available from any other device. Again, within Google, wallpapers, your Gmail settings, any of the apps that you've downloaded through your Google account or that you've set up through your Google account will be backed up. Display settings, I haven't even really paid attention with that myself within Google, separately from what I actually set up on my system. But language and input settings, the date and time settings, and to some extent, the settings and data for apps that are not made by Google. And that depends on what the application is and the privileges that you've allowed Google to have. So where should you back up? Again, considering the rule of 3, you can consider using external drives, and I still use, it's an older sort of method, but use 2 external drives and rotate them, one at home and one off-site. My off-site one is one that I keep in my office at work. Can't get at it lately, so I can't rotate it out as much as I might have wanted, but this is one way you can do that. One of the options that had been cited in the past is to use CDs or DVDs. They are portable. They're still relatively inexpensive, although because they're getting used less and less, I think costs are actually increasing. But I don't recommend this because it's harder and harder to get a computer that actually has a CD, DVD drive. And then even for Blu-ray discs, the capacity is relatively low. So I mentioned that, but I really don't think that's a good option for a backup. You'd have a hard time restoring it as well. You'd have to find another computer that also has that drive that can read it. Even though it's not a proprietary format, just finding the drive is difficult. USB flash drives, they are portable, but they're also easy to lose or steal, and they are somewhat prone to failure, in particular mechanical failure. If you hit I've done this, and here's why I mention it. If you have a USB flash drive on the side of your laptop and then you bump it too hard, you will mechanically damage it, and then you can't use it anymore. They are a good option for some archival copies. Say if you want to just keep a copy of your tax files for the last 7 years, and then you can put that USB drive in a secure location. And they are an easier way to facilitate sneaker-net transfers. If you're really having a hard time connecting a device to your network, you can take a USB drive and move something from one computer to another, or one device to another. If you do plan to use a flash drive for backup instead of just transferring files, I recommend getting a good brand name so that you get a good, reliable flash drive to do that backup. If you have larger data requirements, a small home business or several people in the household, you might consider having network-attached storage. That's a large drive or a group of drives that you can set up in a RAID configuration, for example. So if you have large data requirements, a network-attached storage device might be a good way to do that. And then there's online storage. And that now, the change from 5 years ago is that online storage has become a lot more accessible. Speeds have gotten better for our home networks, for some of us. I know not everybody, but it makes this a much more attractive option for doing your backup. That's automatically your off-site storage if you use this option. So Google Drive, you get 15 gigabytes free with a Google account. That may not be enough to back up your entire system, but you could use it to back up some of your key files. And if you want to, then you can choose to get 100 gigabytes for $2 a month. And if you put things into the Google Docs format and store that on Google Drive, that doesn't count against the total, or Google Sheets or any of the Google document formats. They don't count against the total. That includes the music or the pictures. But if you're saving photos up there, realize that they might not be at quite the resolution that you'd like if you're going to be doing prints of those. If you use Apple devices, the iCloud is an option as well. You get a certain amount free again. So iCloud is an option for if you have an Apple device with Apple iOS. You do need to have the more recent version of the Apple operating system in order to be able to use an iCloud account. Another option then, though, with the online storage are paid services. iDrive is one of the ones that gets good reviews. You can see you can get up to 2 terabytes of storage for $70 a year. So that's kind of expensive. I don't use that, but it does give you plenty of storage. It does give you then, that will include the software that you need to do the backup and quite a few other services. Another option is Acronis True Image. Starts at $50 a year for 250 gigabytes and gets pretty expensive. So if you're getting something that's similar to the iDrive there, it's about $100 a year for 1 terabyte. But both of those are ones that get good reviews. PC Magazine reviews are listed here, but you can find other places that also rate these highly. So types of backups. If you look at how to do backups, you will also often see that you do the system image. Again, that would be an entire copy of your computer system. I don't recommend that because it's large and time consuming and is a big demotivator. You're not likely to maintain doing this because of the time and effort and storage that it requires. That does not mean that you shouldn't have a system recovery drive. Now that can be done on a USB, so you can create a system recovery USB drive. And in addition to that, because you're not doing that complete backup, it is good to know what and where your product codes are. So if you've purchased software, you want that license code so that you can reinstall that software. And the recommendation is if you do create a system recovery drive to recreate that annually, because you have been getting updates along the line. If you have an older one, you'll still be able to do it, but then you'll have to do all of the updates after you would do a recovery using a USB drive. And Microsoft has the instructions on how to create that recovery drive, so I've got that there. So create a recovery drive, but I don't recommend doing an entire system image. Instead, what you can do is use a combination of a full backup and either an incremental or a differential backup. So a full backup is all the files that you designate to be backed up. So it's not your entire system, but it would probably be all of the documents in your documents folder and all the subfolders and some of the other things that I already mentioned on what to back up. So that would be included in your full backup. Then an incremental backup would monitor that, so your software would, whatever software you're going to end up using to do this, would monitor and see any new or modified files since the last full backup, or the last incremental backup if you're using incremental. So it looks at anything that was changed since the last backup happened. And to do a restoration then from that, you would need that last full backup and all of the incremental backups. Another way to do that, though, is to use a differential backup. So you do a full backup, and then anything that was modified since the last full backup was done gets included in the differential backup. And the reason that you'd want to do that is then when you go to restore it, a complete restoration only needs the last full backup and the last differential backup. You don't need any of the other differential backups that happened in between just the last full backup and the last differential backup. So I also recommend using scheduled backups. Your software can do that for you. So, for example, you would do that on the first day of the month. You would do a full backup, and then using the drive, if you're rotating them, use the drive that you just brought back home to do that full backup. And the drive that you just finished from the previous month gets taken off site. So you do that full backup and then do a daily or a weekly incremental backup. Or if you have the storage and now because of the speeds, you can also do a regular timed backup. So that can be something so if you have that drive attached to your device all the time, you can do a regular time backup. So it looks to see what has changed and does a backup every 10 minutes, every hour, every day. So that's the daily backup. They would do that incremental backup. It could be happening almost continuously. When you do a backup, at least in particular your full backups, I recommend that you test it. So open your backup and read some files. Make sure that you can access them and that the files that you expected to be in that backup are there. So that verifies that you set up your backup software properly and that you're reading and writing to the drive properly. And because of that, don't delete the old backup until the new backup has been completed successfully and you verify that. So the drive that you just brought back home has got one that's double old. You want to make sure that the one that you just took off site really has the full backup before you erase the backup that's now getting rotated in. That's just an example, but anytime you're getting rid of an old backup to create some space for the next backups, make sure that you've still got a valid backup before you delete one. And also, anytime you're going to make major changes to your PC, so what's happened in the last 5 years for most of us, should be for all of us, is we upgraded to Windows 10. And before I did that, I made sure that I had a recent full backup. It's Murphy's Law. If I hadn't done that, I would have had trouble. Because I did that, my upgrade went smoothly, and I still had the backup. I can still read that old backup from Windows 7, but I had that assurance then, that protection against losing files during the upgrade process itself. As Tom's mentioned in past presentations, I don't recommend a program either that uses a proprietary format. If you're doing that, then you have to make sure that they're going to be around when you need them during a restoration process. So I continue to use Cobian Backup. It's free, and the backups are easily readable on any computer. They're really just copies of the files that I've backed up, so I can take it. It's a way I could do a transfer, but when I did change to a new system, I just was able to copy files off of the backup onto the new computer, had them all accessible. It didn't take any, I didn't even need Cobian to do that restore. I just read the files off the backup hard drive. So I give the address there where you can get the latest version of Cobian backup software that's free. PC World likes the Ease US to do backup, although I think that uses a proprietary format, but it is one that, again, is free. It gets good reviews. And as mentioned before, the online services, if you use one of those, like iDrive, it will include software that provides that backup application. So I got through that a little faster than I thought, but I will open now to any questions. I am looking now back at the chat. So the May date should be the 21st, not the 18th that I had on the slide. So I had a typo there. So our next meeting date is on the Thursday, May 21st. And then if you're looking at the chat yourself, you can see that people are doing regular backups. That's good to see. Using hard drives still. Oh, yeah, so that's a good point. So Chris is saying, what about using Windows backup software? That's actually a good choice. That now it is what's called file history you can do. And so that's not a bad option, especially compared to doing nothing. So you can use that. It's limited in some of its capabilities, but if you use that, I mean, it is easy to set up. You can use the Windows. You can do the full backup and restore if you want to do the full system image. Again, I don't recommend that, but you can turn on file history. You do need to have an attached drive or access to the cloud in order to do that backup, but you can use that backup software as well. So that's a good point, Chris. And Windows 10 includes a Windows 7 backup. So what really had been the Windows 7 backup, Windows 10 can still read. but the actual backup software has changed a little bit. So you want to make sure that you've got the new Windows 10 file history turned on if that's the way you're doing your backup. So hopefully that answers that question.
Jim, this is Tom. I believe the Windows 10 backup in that it's not something that usually that I recommend because it is proprietary. Backups, as Jim has mentioned, we usually try and keep them as non-proprietary as possible, meaning that I can take that external file or drive and load it onto another device, a new computer, a new device, going from a Mac to a PC, any device there. And if you use the Windows 10 backup and stuff like that, you are limited to restoring in Windows 10 with that version and going through that process. Whereas these other backups, it looks like any file structure, I can use it on any other device.
Right. So yeah, that's a good point. That it is a proprietary format, so you do need to then get to another Windows computer and make sure that you have access to that backup if you do the Windows 10 backup or any version of Windows backup. Yes, that's so. I was going to mention that myself, so thank you, Tom. I'm going to skip Bob's question here because, for a moment anyway, I don't use Toolkit and I don't know that well, but the OneDrive, that is, again, used more about syncing versus backup. So again, if you use OneDrive and you can have then a copy of that synced to your local drive, so again, you have that OneDrive files are accessible for any other device where you can log into your account and access your OneDrive. You can get those files. They are synced locally so that if you lose your internet access, you have access to the files still. You can work on them, and then when you get a connection back to the internet, it will do that syncing. But remember again that syncing is keeping them in sync. So if you delete it off your device when you're offline, once you connect back up to the internet, it will get deleted off the internet OneDrive as well. That's a difference from backing it up where you have a copy on the internet that if you were to delete it accidentally off your desktop or your laptop, then you can still go back to the copy that's stored on the internet and it won't be erased as soon as you get the connection there. That's the difference between doing a backup and syncing. So I hope that's clear there for you, Ken. And then now we're asking about Toolkit or Carbonite. I know the Carbonite is another one that gets good reviews. I haven't used it myself, and I'm not sure about the format again, but again, the emphasis that it's a lot easier if you don't have to use a proprietary format to get at your files again. Will Cobian back up across multiple user accounts on a PC? Yes, you can set it up to do across multiple user accounts. And one of the other things that's nice about Cobian, it's actually pretty powerful, is you can set it up to do your backup to 2 locations. So you could set Cobian up to do the backup to your attached hard drive and to an internet access if you've got it. So that's another powerful part of Cobian. And Cobian is no longer supporting, that's not quite true. They sold the Cobian software, so you're not going to see any updates. It will remain at Cobian 11, and then any updates are, I haven't been following that, tracking that, but Cobian 11 itself continues to get good reviews, and I've found that it continues to meet my needs quite well, so I continue to use that. So has anyone else got experience with either Toolkit or Carbonite that they wanted to comment on those? And if you have something to share, you can unmute to do that.
I'll mention on Copian. Copian's still my personal recommendation too. And this kind of goes back to that proprietary deal. When you do a backup, and I've got backups that go back, I don't know what it is. My oldest is maybe 10 years ago. And doesn't matter what version of Copian I used, doesn't matter if Copian goes out of business tomorrow, I can still get at my files, I can still copy them because they are still in a directory, they are still files out there, they are not compressed in the proprietary format or anything there. Whereas if you do use some of these proprietary formats, you have to recognize that as versions change, you may lose access to your old backups, and especially if you're trying to use it on a different platform, a different device than what you originally created it on, you may not be successful in restoring files. So the main reason that I personally love Copian is that think of it as a file manager with automation, where you can schedule it to back up at certain times. You can tell it exactly which directories, which files to include, which directories to exclude. So you can set up all that automation. But the end result of what it copies it to is a standard file format that can be read by any other file manager on any other device.
So, yeah, and somebody asked, Bob asked, is Copian proprietary? You can use an encoded format, and then that would be proprietary, but I've got it just set up that it's just putting copies out there that, as Tom just mentioned, you can read on any other device that connect to that drive. And we're getting some other reviews too that Carbonite works well to back up to Windows 10 files, which I can read on my iPhone. Jim Olson said that. So yeah, that's a good example there. Then where you get that good access. I'm still not sure about the file format there. Whether your iPhone, do you have a Carbonite account on your iPhone, or is it just they're in a place where you can access them? I might have to do a little research, or do you know, Jim?
Well, I'm not exactly sure. The files are continuously backed up off of my Windows 10 PC, and I go into the online Carbonite account with my iPhone, and then I'm able to view them if I suddenly find myself traveling and I need to know some information. So it's very seamless and works very well. Cost is about $70, $72 a year for the offsite backup.
Yeah. Okay. And then I see Jim Beardsley saying he uses Backblaze for cloud backup, $60 a year and unlimited storage. And Jim takes a lot of pictures, so I'll bet he uses a lot of storage.
Yeah, I got 5 gigabytes on Backblaze without any problem.
Okay. And I know probably Tom is a heavier user than I am as well. I don't take that many pictures, so I'm still getting by with using my own hard drive and rotating those out, and then I just have some things that I will put up on OneDrive or onto Google Drive to transfer them. I don't really use that as a backup option myself. So my offsite is still the old-fashioned, get them on a hard drive and take that hard drive to another location.
Well, with Backblaze, it'll back up an external hard drive.
Yeah.
You can connect. I've got one on videos and one on pictures, and it backs up both of them without any problem.
Yep. Yeah, so that's a good way to get that protection there, so that if those hard drives were to go down, again, there's the rule of three, that Jim's got whatever his main location is, he's got that hard drive, and then he's got the Backblaze. And they're, in that case, 3 separate devices in at least 2 different locations.
Plus, you can get, if you're a Prime member, you can get unlimited photo storage on Amazon.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Are there any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we can end early. We'll make sure that we get... I'll go through the chat. If there was anything that needs to be addressed individually, I'll take care of that as well. So since we have time, Bonnie, yes, go ahead. So Bonnie's question is, can we have a meeting on using Teams for personal use? And so that we'll take that under consideration. That Tom did just have a meeting on using some of the services, but I'm not sure how recently he started using Teams himself. But he did just mention before the meeting started that he's set up a Teams account for his business, and I see Tom's going off mute. Do you want to comment?
Yeah, in terms of personal use of Teams, I would not recommend it. If you're looking to hold your own meetings or do things, you'll get by fine just with Skype. Skype is easier to set up, easier to share, easier for people to work with. Teams as a package is geared towards organizations and collaboration of documents, working on documents. You can replace your whole email system with Teams. So Teams as a package is not meant for video chatting on that. Use Skype. So that would be my recommendation there. You'll find that Teams is overkill there and is more complicated and it's not geared towards more casual users.
Right. And Zoom is another option just for the quick meetings as well, and Bonnie noted that too. So yeah, I do recommend when you have some time, Bonnie, you can go back and see what Tom presented last month.
Yeah, and I think Bonnie has commented Zoom. I had recommended Zoom before, especially now. But Zoom has gone back to the 40-minute limit before you get kicked off. You will have to restart back up after 40 minutes. So that's the reason that we aren't using it here. The reason we're using Microsoft Teams here is because Jim and current 3M employees do have a Teams account already, and we can have unlimited number of users for an unlimited number of time. That's why we're using it right now. Whereas we couldn't do that in Skype, and we couldn't do that in Zoom.
So, and Zoom, if you do one-to-one, you won't run into that 40-minute. So if you're just doing a chat with one other person through Zoom, you won't run into the limit. So just wanted to mention that. Skype won't be harvested by Microsoft for personal use. And realize, too, that there's Skype and there's Skype for business. And what Tom was just talking about was Skype and not the Skype for business. They're related, but they're not the same. Is there a way to save this chat I'm wondering if I can, so within Teams, if you come back to this meeting, you will find the chat will stay here for, I'm not sure how long a meeting chat will stay. It will stay at least for a month, though. And so you could go in there and take out the parts that you want out of the chat. So you could do that. And then, Bonnie, you don't have to uninstall the Teams app that you downloaded to go to this meeting, because we're going to continue to use it for these meetings when we can't get into the meeting rooms themselves. So because of that reason, then I would keep Teams around. Yeah, that's so a good point. Backup on a hard drive versus backup on a solid state drive. Is one better than the other? Hard drives are pretty reliable. Even solid state drives can have failures. So I would say that the advantage of the solid state drives is they've gotten, so they're significantly faster, but they are still more expensive. So it's whatever the trade-offs are, whether you want to use a hard drive versus a solid state drive. But so that's a good question.
This is also a hard drive. You do have a potential there of having a head crash or having a mechanical failure within the drive. So you are a little bit safer there with the solid state, because you have no moving parts. But like Jim said, for the same amount of space, you're going to be paying probably 2 to 3 times more money. But they are faster. Now that faster part, personally for myself, it doesn't matter because I have it automatically backing up at night when I'm not using the computer. So the first time I do a full backup, I rotate my drives in and out once a month there. That first time that I back up, my backup takes roughly 2 hours to write all of the files that I have, all the music, all the photos, everything out there. It's close to 300 gigabytes that it's writing out. But since I'm not using the computer and it's done at night, it doesn't cause any issue how long it takes. After that, it's doing incremental backups, and so those are usually taking 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever to back up. But that first backup of the month, where it's doing a full backup of all files, that takes a long time. The SSD would maybe cut that down by a third or a quarter of what it would take on a hard drive. Okay.
But either one, I've been using the same backup drive, so I've been using a hard drive, solid state drive as well. It gets in the rotation, and they just keep using it. They've gotten reliable enough that you don't have to worry about that as an issue. You still can check that on your hard drive. So then, so I'll clarify then for Stevens, once you have a full backup and doing incrementals or differentials, do you ever need to do another full backup? So our recommendation, again, I'm not sure I quite get it every month, but whenever I do the rotation out, yes, you do another full backup. So then you've got that full backup, and then I do the incrementals. But if you're doing differentials, then you continue to do those until you rotate that drive out off-site, bring in the new one, the one that was off-site, bring that back online, and do another full backup. So it's always a cycle of, say, first of the month, do that full backup. That in Tom's example takes a couple of hours to do that full backup, have it run overnight when you're not trying to use the computer, and then do the incremental backups daily or weekly or however often you're going to do those incremental backups to maintain that you've got everything that you're currently working on backed up as well. And then at the end of the month, rotate the drives out again and repeat the process. And how often do you delete the full backup and start over? So yeah, that one that just came home, I've tested the one that I've taken, that I'm going to take off site. Now I've taken it off site. I know I've got a good backup in my office at work. I take that one that had been at work, I take that back home. I can delete that full backup and start over. Do that once a month. Works well for me, it's a target. Right now, I can't get to the one that's at work, so I'm doing a longer period of time where I'm doing incremental backups.
Jim, I may mention back on solid state drives. I know it's popular now for people to get solid state drives and stick them inside of their desktop. And that's not something that I recommend to people. I recommend that it still be an external drive that you can take. And like Jim is doing, either put it in an external location, put it in a fireproof safe, put it somewhere else. But if you have it installed inside the desktop that you have as another drive, if somebody breaks in and steals the machine or you have a fire, that's lost. So you have to start considering what are the possibilities of stuff. And over the years, there's been 3 people that I've known that have had somebody break into their apartment or their home. And when they took the computer equipment, they took all of the computer equipment that was sitting on the desk, which included their backup files. So don't just assume you have a certain level of protection by having an external drive or a second drive and a hard drive in the desktop. But you want that off-site. You want it protected from a fire, protected from somebody stealing it. Because if it is your pictures and it's the important things, you want to protect it.
Yeah. And so by doing this monthly rotation or backing up to the internet, that's one of the, if you back up to the cloud, you're getting it off-site every time you do a backup. So that's even safer than I'm still doing the rotating out. So that's a big plus for doing the backup to the cloud is you're not susceptible to having everything stolen. If
how you doing there, Jack? I haven't been able to get a hold of you.
They're going to get everything back to when I last did my rotation out in March. I'm not going to have that backup. But I will have everything from March and earlier is still in my office at work. Ken is asking, should I back up OneDrive?
Oh, that's too bad there, but at least you stayed away from the coronavirus there.
I'd still recommend backing up the drives, the files that you're syncing to OneDrive, because
all the deals are closed there.
Accidental deletion,
can't even see my parents
for example,
there.
because again, remember, if you're just syncing between OneDrive and your desktop and something corrupts a file or you delete a file that you didn't mean to delete, it's going to be deleted off OneDrive as well, or the corruption is going to get synced, and so you're going to have that corrupt file in both locations. So it's good to have that backup. So I would recommend, yes, that you want to back up even if you're using OneDrive.
No doctor wants to sign off on.
And Jim White is saying, yeah, he uses a Google account and $1.99 a month then to get the, I presume that's for the extra storage, and then you can do the backup to your Google Drive. So you got it on the cloud, that gets you the copy that's off-site and that backup that, again, if you've got it set up and make sure you do it on a regular basis, you're getting that protection. I'll see what I can do to back up this chat, and then we can maybe even attach that as another set of on the internet as history for this meeting. So, and then back up to the cloud is is the information there safe and secure, and that if you use the proper methodology, yes, that it is on the internet, but it's actually, you still need the proper access to get to those files on the internet, and it's actually somebody coming in and stealing something out of your home is a higher security risk than it is for them getting at files that are on the internet if you're using any of the services that we're talking about here. So I see people are leaving, and I think I have to move on myself. But thank you for all the discussion. That was good. I'm going to end the recording now. So the last reminder that this was recorded.
Thanks, Jim.
Yep. Everyone have a good day. Yeah, stay safe, stay well.
You too.